What's up, everybody? Welcome to another video here on Smack. If you enjoy this video, please go ahead and like it, subscribe to our channel, enjoy the show.
It's not only about the stay in the cabin, it's also about the whole experience that starts from the moment you book until the moment you get home.
Welcome to a new episode of the Smack Hospitality podcast. My name is Florian Montag, and today I'm in Berlin and sat down with Julian Trautwein from Raus. We spoke about his not-so-typical founder story, why Airbnb disrupted the hotel industry, and all about the vision and concept behind Raus. Enjoy the show! Big welcome to the show, Julian. It's great having you on the Smack Hospitality podcast today. Before we start, I really want to ask two quick questions to get the mood going. What is your favorite music genre, and what's your favorite festival?
Well, first of all, thanks so much for having me on the show. My favorite music genre, I used to be a DJ when I was a bit younger, and I actually played on festivals. So I'm kind of a house and electronic music nerd, I would say. So the good old house vibes are kind of my get my feet moving.
And is there any special event here in Berlin where you say, hey, this was kind of the epic times of your DJ career, or? Well,
I think when the first Berlin festival started, that was kind of my love here. But since I became a dad a while ago, I've turned old and lazy, I would say. So I don't go out as much as I used to. I kind of started my career in the nightlife, and as I said, kind of was spinning records on parties and after parties. Yeah. But since then,
exactly, that's also what I wanted to kind of get into directly. Like today, you're of course known in the industry as the founder of Raus, where we'll dive into a bit later on. But you don't really have the classic kind of startup founder background, let's say, or that's at least what you told me last time. Can you maybe share us your insights, how you came into the hospitality industry? Spinning records, but then somewhat, did you fall in love in hospitality, or what's your story?
Yeah, sure. So basically, off school, I started spinning records and being a DJ on kind of private parties and then clubs and kind of the typical kind of DJ career, but always made it for the love of music and kind of the love of a good party, I would say. And that's also how I met my first boss. That was in a bar, and then we liked each other. And then the next day I started working for an agency that was really much focused on communications and brand work. And that was the first time I really got in touch from a professional point of view with the whole hospitality and gastronomy scene. So one of the clients was Absolute Vodka and the Pernod Ricard kind of enterprise, and I was in charge of doing all the sponsorships and kind of club and bar work of Absolute in the German-speaking markets. And from there on, it kind of started into a bit of a love story around the whole, I would say, hospitality and Gastfreundschaft industry. I worked on a couple of house openings here, the Stur Hotel in Berlin being one of
the
them.
Iconic Berlin properties, right?
Yes, fantastic hotel. And from after the agency, I started working at Airbnb, and I joined the company when there were around like 450 people working for Airbnb. They just entered the German market, and it was that time when I told my mom I was kind of about this Airbnb. And that you basically sleep at a stranger's house. She was like, are you sure? Can't you get like a real job? Like, people won't be doing that in the future. And
go back DJing because Airbnb is not going to work out. Right?
Well, at that point, I almost started to become a bit more serious than DJing. Although DJing is a serious job, I would say. Yes, absolutely. So, but luckily, I kind of trusted my gut feeling and joined Airbnb and was working at Airbnb's brand and communications team for over 6 years, and really saw the company grow from of, like, as I said, 450, 500 people to about 8,000 when I left. And really being part of this phenomenal growth story of Airbnb was an absolute joy. And that was also the first time when I really got to understand that hospitality isn't necessarily defined by star standards. So everyone basically can become a hotelier with its own property, and become a good host. And if you ask me kind of what hospitality ultimately really is about, is being the great host and making someone feel welcome, whether it's in a hotel, in a vacation rental, us at Raus, or in whatever property type there is. And then from Airbnb, after 6 years, I've joined Tourlane, which is also a Berlin-bred company founded by two other Julians, one of them being a former Airbnb colleague of mine, Julian Stiefel. Basically are digitizing the whole long-haul travel destination market. So a typical trip is 2 weeks, 3 weeks, South Africa, garden route, and safari at Kruger Park. These kind of very, very exceptional trips that you not do probably every year, but like these once in a lifetime experiences. Fantastic business. What they're up to is it's really great. They've been highly successful so far. And I joined building the brand and comms department for them. And then Corona hit. And global travel bans and aren't necessarily the best for a business that sells long haul travel. So it kind of pulled the brake for a lot of things at Tourlane. And I mean, the company is doing phenomenally well now again. But at that time, I was at a point where it also enabled me to take a bit time off again and really consider what I want to do. And it ultimately also brought me to Raus and launch Raus.
Looking at your career jumps a bit from, more operational at Das Stur and other hotel openings, then going over to Airbnb and Tourlane. Both of them are more digital products, less kind of more platforms. How come? Is that just kind of coincidence that you went a bit on the tech side, or?
Well, I think for true great experience, it's enabled by both a physical and a technological experience. So I think if you have a really shitty booking experience, or if you can't find the info that you need for your trip, you already start in a bit of a bad mood for your stay. So I think technology can solve a lot of these things for you as a guest, and ultimately help you to have a more frictionless, a more seamless experience during your stay. Plus, I think I've always looked at the classical big hotel corporations as being a bit behind of what happens in technology. So Airbnb as one, and I'm just speaking of Airbnb because I've been there for quite a while, but it's not the only platform that is doing innovation in the scene. But Airbnb really challenged a lot of the big hoteliers to think outside the box again, and they have been in their patents for such a long time, and because business was doing great for quite a long while, and then as Airbnb probably disrupted the market quite a bit, it also helped, and I fundamentally believe so, helped traditional hoteliers to actually needing to think of other ways how to attract new customers and really getting the guests to stay with them. So I think technology is always, and being innovation driven is always very important, to not forget that customers will always look for what's new and what's kind of the newest thing to do.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think that's definitely big impact. What you can see today, also now a few years down the line after Airbnb came to the market, that suddenly, all of this kind of alternative accommodation categories are coming to market. And of course, also a lot of new companies, I think, like Raus, but we'll get into that in a second, kind of say, hey, I focus on one Airbnb category and I do a 10x better. And it's a vertical in itself. But just going back to kind of you having worked at Airbnb, especially, I'm sure already at the time where you maybe had some contact with Brian Chesky or others, where maybe today it's going to be a bit more complicated. What do you attribute the success of Airbnb? Was it the visionary Brian Chesky and co, so to say, and delivering it? Or was it really the hospitality industry or hotels pretty much sleeping and just being open for disruption? And it was just kind of coincidence that it was them who actually did it?
Well, I think it's a mix of all of what you just mentioned. First of all, Brian, Nate, and Joe, and I'm speaking of them like they were my closest friends. But like, I mean, I've met them a couple of times, and they are just really, really good and smart people. Like, they have done so many good things, and it's just incredible how they've built the company, both in terms of business, but also in terms of culture, and how they've led the employees is fantastic. And so much what I've learned today from there is something that I want to bring into my new company as well. So and the other is, like, I think the market was ripe for innovation, and they against all odds, and everyone was telling them that basically what they're trying to do is like won't work. Against all odds, they have just been so vision driven. And they've just always kind of had this North Star and their values, and that just led them to success. And from a couple of things that they've done, from the way how they have started to fund their business when they weren't able to fundraise any money from venture capital, to crisis, when crisis hit, how they've reacted. And there's a lot of things to learn how Airbnb grew the company. And then I think the big hotel corporations, and from my point of view, did very little to kind of meet the new demand of customers. What they started was like a lot of lobbying, and they spent millions and millions of euros to try to make Airbnb go away. And that's just the way of thinking is, from my point of view, completely wrong. Instead of trying to prevent something to happen that people love, you should try and adapt your business to match this new consumer demand. Because Airbnb would not have been so successful if people not fundamentally would have loved this type of accommodation and this alternative type of spending your time off. And it's not only a pricing thing. It's not only about like avoiding regulation and whatnot. It's really about like this very different type of accommodation. And I wouldn't say it's necessarily better or worse than a stay in a hotel. It's completely a different thing, right? One day you can have like an amazing time in a hotel and go to the spa and enjoy kind of the restaurant and all of that. And the next day you spend with a private host and he shows you around the town, and like it's a very, very different experience. And it's meant to stay.
Yeah, and you can also see like nowadays, 5 years later or more, where you have also all of the professionalized Airbnb concepts for the business traveler. If you look at Numa, Limehome, etc., at the end of the day, it's exactly that. It's or this whole service department, hybrid concepts. And I think COVID was maybe also catalysator for the hotel industry to wake up in terms of don't fight it, but actually consumer habits are changing. We also need to change.
Absolutely.
And go for it. And now you see more and more hotels actually saying, hey, we have two different offerings for the classic hotel stay and some maybe service departments, because people want to stay and cook in the room and not necessarily have to go to breakfast. But mentioning COVID and mentioning also your story, I mean, you've been at Tourlane, as you mentioned already, must have been incredible, dramatic kind of feeling if everything hockey stick feeling and product market fit is there, but suddenly your guests or your consumers are not allowed to travel anymore and can't use your product. Not focusing too much on that crisis mode, but actually more on the impact it had on you and how you actually went on to start with the idea with Raus. Can you share us a bit your kind of thought process behind it and how you got together with your co-founders?
Yes, absolutely. So first of all, I think one thing that I would like to mention about the impact that kind of the the COVID crisis or the start of it. Are we out of it yet? I'm not
I don't think
100%
so.
sure, but like not really. If you look at China, it's very much there, but like here it doesn't feel like anything happened at the moment, at least in terms of regulation, at least. However, in terms of impact, I mean, it's been dramatic for the entire industry, right? Regardless whether you're in long haul, short haul, like it was dramatic for a lot of people working in the industry. I think one of the things that I particularly liked about how Tourlane has handled the crisis is that they've really made sure that they can be as helpful to its workforce as possible, right? So try to hold layoffs off for as long as possible, really trying to make things work. And also being super flexible in terms of people that just book their trips and it's dream trips, right? Like people spend a lot of money on these kind of trips. And then if they get canceled, like people are getting frustrated. So, you need to be very, very, close to your customers. And I think Tourlane did a very, very good job in this scenario, just being very close and listen to the customers, listen to the employees and trying to make it work. And now, I know I'm not involved in the company anymore, but from what I hear, it has paid off, right? Like now they're coming out of this crisis stronger.
Sure, everybody wants a dream trip now.
Exactly.
To South Africa or somewhere far.
Yeah. But like exactly as you said, you need to replan from like, as you said, like the hockey stick growth to, okay, now we need to have a long runway and like things need to change. And, it's been a couple of tough times, and then kind of that transitioning to, which also then ultimately led me to take the decision to leave. But it was more of a decision of like the Raus concept and the idea of Raus, something that even during my Airbnb was something that I always aspired and looked up to. So this whole alternative accommodation and the more, I want to say, quirky and interesting accommodation, not the standardized serviced apartment room, was something that being like a brand marketeer always was the one category that was always booked out. That was all on all the wish lists, that wasn't covered by all the media, that the influencers like to stay in. So the tree houses, the houseboats, the earth caves, the like fantastic out of the box, because it's something that you don't have at home. It's something that is very, very different from the way you live your life usually. It's something that is like an absolute fantastic, different experience. So this was something that I looked into even during my time at Airbnb. And then during my time at Tourlane, after the COVID hit, I was on short-time work. And at the same time, my son was born, Karl. And it really got me thinking about like what I want to do, and like if now might be the time to actually kind of bring this concept to life. So I founded Raus together with Johann and Christopher, who actually the three of us know each other now for over 20 years. We grew up together in Hamburg. We're friends from school. When we didn't go to the same school, but we know each other kind of from school times. Chris actually was my math tutor in I don't know what grade, because I was so bad at math, and he's obviously our CFO now. So but we all kind of had our this moment in our careers, all working in very different industries, where we felt that the way we work and the way how we live our lives isn't how we want to do it in the future. Not saying that we had kind of like a bit like that we were frustrated too much, but like I was on short-term work. Chris was in finance, and he just quit his job. And Johann was literally kind of burned out. And the three of us, we all had kind of these key moments when we thought about, okay, we want to change something about that. And that was really the first idea for Raus, was really like, can we create a space that gives you a bit more balance to your crazy life in the city? Because we all kind of enjoy the city as well. Like it's not that we say the city is a bad place or anything, because we love city life. Like I love going out. I love restaurants. I love going to the theater, and like the culture and everything about the city is something that I like. But what is really hard is to kind of turn off for a bit in the city, because there's always something going on. There's always like to-do lists. And then when you get home, there's the next list, and there's social pressure, and it's really, really hard to kind of recharge your batteries while you're in the city. So that was our first idea. And then we really started to map out and draw on like a sheet of paper, like, hey, how can we create a space for you? And what does this space need? So you can just recharge your batteries for a bit. And that's how kind of our first cabin came into place. It's like there wasn't any architects or anything involved. It's literally us on a sketch on a paper where we thought about, okay, this is how the room could look like. Yeah, it's too big, smaller, blah, blah, blah. And then at some point, we looked for, okay, is there anyone crazy enough who would build this for us? Because we're not architects. Yeah. We are. We just thought about like, hey, how can we create something that has everything that you need in there, but nothing that you don't need? So we didn't want to have TVs in there. We didn't want to have. It should really be about you and finding a space that supports you to just spend your time with things that really matter to you. And from there, it just started with our first cabin. We found this producer in the Netherlands who said, "Okay, I like the design." And we can make it work.
Pass the test. I can.
Yeah, we can make it work. And then, I mean, it obviously took a bit to like when you go into the production and feasibility and all of that. But it was always important for us that we find something that gives you the comfort and the style of, I want to say, like a boutique hotel room, but bring this completely into the wild, into nature. So, and this is kind of what's the core of our cabins, right? We're trying to give you a very, very high quality stay, but without any infrastructure around you, with like a complete off-grid setup in the middle of the woods.
And I think you totally achieved that. From my personal experience staying at one of the cabins, it's I think exactly that point which you said. It's the details, it's looking at, suddenly you have the plates from nicest ceramic places, everything, the shower, the experience is totally on point, but you don't have anything which kind of distracts you and brings you back to the world, and always with a little bit of humor that if you need the Wi-Fi, I think it's the Wi-Fi code is something like "I can't live without it" or something.
That's right.
So it's the small details there. So, but how did you? So you yourself, you have the Airbnb experience. You have the second co-founder who has the finance experience. And the third one,
Yes, Johann has a bit of a real estate and also comms background. So he was in politics actually before he joined Raus. But he is the one, I would say, the tiny house aficionado of the three of us. So he's literally stayed in any tiny house concept there is in Europe, I would say. And had a very, very specific like view on what this needs to do for you as a guest and doesn't. So the three of us, I'm overlooking more kind of the brand, business development, and product, so digital product side of things. Chris obviously does finance, but also legal and HR, and Johann is doing some sort of like a COO, overseeing the production of the cabins and also the property operations. So that's kind of the mix between the three of us.
Yeah, I have a few questions around the cabins and the locations. I mean, now you're at 5 locations. You said in our conversation before the podcast that you're planning to go to 8 or plus soon. How do you find the locations? Because for the ones who don't know, you don't rent necessarily a space, but you put it somewhere on the ground of somebody else and you're allowed to put it there. How do you kind of reach out to them and find the sites, and maybe you can share some insights behind that?
Yeah, absolutely. And that was something that when we started the business, we thought that would be really, really hard to find like beautiful spots. Actually, it wasn't very easy, but like we were pretty much overrun in the beginning from landlords that would like to work with us. And that's being because most of the landlords that we work with are agricultural businesses, so farmers, foresters, people that do vineyards and these type of like people that are very, very proud of what they do, and also sit on very beautiful land. And what was really interesting for us was that they, a lot of them, they are so hardworking and they're being paid so shit money for what they do, right? Like it's actually quite dramatic when you have conversations with them and when they're trying to do everything that we love having here in the city. We all want kind of our organically grown carrot in the supermarket, right? But we really don't understand how much work it is and how little the producer in the end is being paid for the product that we consume, right? There's so many steps in between the producer and then the end consumer. Side story, but like, and we thought, okay, to get access to this beautiful land, why don't we kind of get them a share of the revenue of the cabins that they generate for them to kind of rent the space. And the cabins, they're mobile, so they are on wheels. You don't see this on the image, let's say, but they're very minimal invasive for the soil. And as soon as we have a plot, we can literally bring one of our cabins within a day. So there isn't like a huge setup involved. There isn't like big construction going on. And it also means that we can remove a cabin from a spot also in just a matter of days again. And there isn't any, there isn't any injury to the soil, you know, which was very important for us, right? Because, these people, they also want to use their land, but they also have a lot of unused land. And then it's really hard for them to make any living from that. Plus, they don't have necessarily the money to invest in their own touristic offerings. So, like building a vacation rental unit next to it's just like a lot of cost involved. And with Raus, they have like a plug and play solution, and from there, then like we work with the first landlords, and then they told the others, and like we're having a long list of people that would like to kind of bring the Raus concept onto their properties.
And you're even going further, right? That even in some locations you then kind of do upselling for their own services.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, exactly. This was also something that we didn't really think about in the beginning, right? But exactly as I mentioned, all of them are doing really fantastic, high quality products, and most of them aren't distributing them digitally yet, right? So they have their farm shops. They might sell some to the local market, and if they are really, really kind of digital, they are connected to one of these like local food box thingies that are being delivered to the city, and you know, like. But and on the other hand, you have the guest, the customer, who really is interested in having local, organic, farm to table like food, right? So when we had one guest inquiring in the very beginning about like, hey, can I actually get some fresh dairy and milk and eggs from the farm shop? And we said, oh, okay, sure. Why can't we be the intermediary that kind of connects the farm shop and the products to the guest's stay? So when you stay in one of our cabins, you can book additional amenities and services and like F&B products that most of them are kind of as local as possible, because like when we talk about farm to table, like in our case, your table is literally on the farm, right? So you can't get that much closer to where things are
closer than that, yeah,
where things are being produced. And the other thing is like that there's also a lot of touristic infrastructure that is untapped in kind of the countryside settings. So the business that Airbnb and Get Your Guide and all of them are doing in the city, doing fantastic job in the city, the big red bus tours around kind of the city centers. We're trying to kind of get the countryside version of that onto our platform. So that's collecting mushrooms in the woods with a forester, to horseback riding on one of the horse farms, to I'm missing the English word, but Kräuterwanderung, so hikes where you kind of collect herbs,
yeah.
And then you can make a tea out of that from the grandmother of one of our landlords, right? So these are very things that people are interested in because they're coming to experience nature, and it's like our I want to say upselling or cross-selling rates are through the roof, because it's not that we force it onto the guests. It enhances the stay. It enhances the experience. So this is something that we're definitely going to develop further in the time to come.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I spoke to Carl from Upsell Guru last week, and he mentioned also that, for example, your new sauna is going through the roof. Maybe can you share us a bit, kind of, also congratulations on your fundraising now. But looking at this, so now you have the cabins. Now you've just introduced the sauna as an additional product, which you can upsell maybe from yourself. Where do you see the path in the next 6, 12, 18 months on how many cabins will you have? Will you have diversify even more with your offering? What's the strategy there?
Sure. So first of all, I like to say that I don't necessarily see us as a cabin business. I think the cabin for us is more kind of the gateway and your access to nature. I really see Raus as more of like I want to call it nature on demand platform. So whenever you need to kind of get out of the city and you think about this, I need to kind of get into nature. That's kind of when you should be looking at Raus. So that includes a stay in the cabin, but in the future could also be something completely different. I'm not sharing too much there, but there will be more coming. And the second is that as I just mentioned before, it's not only about the stay in the cabin. It's also about the whole experience that starts from the moment you book until the moment you get home. Everything that you consume while you're there, from food to also like the activities that you do. And how can we help you to really kind of find a bit more balance to your crazy life in the city? And that's kind of what we work towards too. In terms of numbers, there will be more coming, and we'll try to expand. At the moment, we're completely booked out for our first 5 locations. No, that's not right. The first 4 locations, we launched our newest location 3 days ago, on Friday, and we are almost booked out. So
it's impossible to get a room at Raus.
Which is great and bad at the same time,
For sure.
because we would love to offer more availability, and there will be more cabins coming very soon.
Yeah, but I can only speak from my own experience. It's as you say, something which is so different. And of course you can go camping, you can go to also nice camping sites, but having that completely isolated experience where you just have one cabin and it's at the same time the same standard as what you have in the kind of your home and apartment just outside of Berlin. For me as a person living in Berlin, I think I'm also maybe exactly that kind of target market or part of that. It's something which you tell all your friends about, and you tell, hey, you should try it out. So it's really this kind of influencer experience where people want to share about, because it's different.
Yeah, I'm super glad that you liked it and that you had a great experience, and it's exactly what we hear from our guests as well. Most of the people that have stayed at Raus have heard from us through their friends or through social media, actually, where people shared a story about their experience. And also we've been organically growing our Instagram followership now. Like we launched in end of October, so that's 6 months ago. And we have over 27,000 followers on Instagram.
27,000.
Yeah, and just in 6 months, that is very, very great.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
and like me being like a brand marketing dude, like I've done this for a living for quite a bit, and I couldn't achieve that with my previous companies and because it's also like a very, I don't want to say Instagrammable product, but like people love this kind of experience, and that's why they talk about it, and that's why they share it with their friends, and that's when others are interested in what you do. And that's why we also, in terms of kind of hospitality, none of us is like a pure hospitality expert. So none of us has been on a hotel school or anything. But I think it's also one of the benefits, because we're trying to really look at things from a guest perspective, and everything that can enhance the trip and your experience at Raus is something that we look into.
Yeah, because that's the thing. At the end of the day, so everybody tells like, oh, it's such a nice experience, but actually you don't have any personal interaction with anybody besides maybe if you book kind of a walk through the forest, and it's all digital. to a certain extent. How do you think does that work together? Is that your experience from Airbnb, so to say, that you realize actually it's just about how to build a flawless customer journey, which is more important than actually just humans interacting with one another?
Yeah, I think the human interaction is still very important. So people have questions about their stay, and even if things kind of don't go as planned, they wanna be sure that they can reach out to someone, right? So in our case, we do have that obviously too, and focus a lot on our customer experience team. But I think technology can play a very crucial role in supporting you as a guest in this journey, from like a seamless booking process, but also like when you enter the cabin. In our case, and if you've seen it, we have digital key locks, so there isn't like a hidden key or anything for you. There actually is one, but I won't tell you where. And in case the locks don't work or anything, but like so like a keyless access, so that you don't have to pick up the keys anywhere before you stay, to then the moment when you're in the cabin and want to kind of order some food, something that we're working on. And how can technology play a role to enhance the stay? But it always ultimately should serve the purpose to have to actually give you an offline experience, right? So what we used to say, or what we're saying, is always we're building some sort of like technology back end for a stay, but the front end, that is nature. That is very, very offline. That is non-tech, right? Mm. The moment when you kind of open the door and you're in the woods and you take a deep breath, and that's the product, you know? And that's the experience that we're trying to sell, and that sell. And technology will always have a supportive and very important role. But we're not a software company per se, right? Like, we have a physical product, we have a very offline experience in the end, where no other people are involved. But we have the technology in the back end that makes all of this possible in the first place.
Yeah, definitely, and also somewhat scalable, because you can have one customer experience team which can focus about X amount of
absolutely
cabins. If not, it would always be kind of limited to a certain area.
Yes, absolutely. And I give you another example. So in the cabins, we've built in a lot of smart home technology into the cabins themselves. So and something that we also going to increase moving forward. So when you're having an off-grid stay at Raus, you have limited resources in terms of electricity, in terms of water, what if after the stay, I can exactly tell you how much electricity you've used, how much water you've used during your stay, to give you a bit of a better understanding of like what's your impact actually during a trip. When you're at home in the city, you open the tap and then water runs. We've lost all of our kind of understanding of like how much water are we using actually. Yeah. Like, you see it in the end of the year, the bill kind of, but that's
so it. Even that often you can't understand it because it's so complicated.
Yeah, right.
Should try to confuse you.
So in the cabins, we're now building these displays that, because we can track all of that already in our backend, right? We can see how much water you consume. We can open the doors remotely. We can measure temperature, all of that type of stuff. We have our own little dashboards to track that. But I think it would be beautiful if you as a guest, after your stay, you get this kind of information about your stay and your impacts, and you also get a bit more aware of your consumption. And if we might help you with letting the water run a bit less when you're back at home, I think we've already done a good job.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think you can also see it with the showers, etc., where, you know, do you need the same water pressure?
Exactly.
Not necessarily to have a nice shower experience. And I thought, again, one of the nice things, I really sound like a fanboy from Raus. But one of these really good stuff which you've implemented there. I would just want to come back to the topic of scalability quickly, because I think for me, when looking at it, this the one where, you know, there's the most questions. Is it like, how do you manage on the one side, maybe like all of the housekeeping topics, maintenance topics, the quality assurance that, okay, today you have 5, but if you have 50 or 100, and not just around Berlin, but in Germany or maybe DACH or whatever, how will you manage that? And what's your plan on that topic?
Yeah, sure. So obviously it's a bit more complex than doing this in a city, where you have 24/7 availabilities. Nevertheless, we've gone through our first winter now as well. Like, we started in October. We were really afraid when we launched this. Like, oh shit! Like, we're
launching into October.
Yeah, we're launching into October. We're launching completely into off season, right? Like, will anyone want to go into Brandenburg countryside in the mid of November while it's raining on a Wednesday? Luckily, people were really interested in doing so. But back to your question. Obviously, there's a lot of things that need to happen during if we want to offer the comfort that we offer to guests on a continuous basis, right? So there is obviously the cleaning. There's maintenance. There is filling up water tanks. There is chopping wood for the wood stove. All of these things. And what we have been doing so far was either working with the landlords themselves, so they can increase their revenue share when they help us with some parts of the operations and the cleaning and the maintenance work, or we've been contracting external cleaning vendors, as you would see. The good thing is, most of the areas that we operate in, they have some sort of existing tourism infrastructure around there. There are hotels, there are vacation rentals in these areas, right? And not necessarily as remote as we are, but there are people that are also kind of doing the jobs in the existing industries. I can't go into too many specifics, but we are able to do this at a very cost sensitive price that is not very far off as you would do it in a city hotel room.
And looking maybe on the second side, so the cost structure, and looking on the pricing structure, just for the people, because a lot of hoteliers listening to Smack, where do you position your price there?
Yeah, so we've just introduced a stay longer and save rate that gives a bit off, but our pricing goes between 160 and now with the new cabin 220 a night. And then with
average minimum length of stay is always 2 nights, right?
That's at the moment it's 2 nights. Yeah.
Is the goal also to kind of reduce that, or is it kind of the Raus experience? You actually need 2 nights to really calm down a bit, or?
Yeah, so I think in terms of operations and the all of that, for us, it's we would even prefer if the stays were a bit longer, obviously. And the trend is going that direction when you look at the numbers. But we also fundamentally believe that if you this isn't like a business travel stay. You're not rushing in and out. You should it's like a mini vacation, right? And you always need this first day to settle in, I would say. So we always recommend to stay at least 2 nights. And that's also why we have a 2-night minimum stay policy.
Yeah. And you do a lot of personal tips, or at least it always feels very personal, especially in the little guide, etc. Is there somebody like a content writer actually traveling to all of the locations, or is it more one of you founders, or is it locals who share all the tips and which you talk about in the recommendations?
I wish I was traveling to all the cabins all the times, and my life was just that. But fortunately, we have an amazing content team that are working on exactly that, but very close together with our landlords, because they actually know their areas best, right? They know the hidden kind of lake spots. They know exactly which farm shop you can get the nicest bread from, and all of this stuff, right? So we work closely with them, and then our content team kind of does the production.
Yeah, amazing. No, I think that's, as you say, it's really also connecting the travelers and the local ecosystem so that they can actually benefit from tourism, which is often not the case. Looking at time, we're already kind of running out of time. Just to finish off, I mean, you said, okay, you have great ideas to the future. Where do you see Raus in 5 years? You quickly mentioned it already that you want to be much more than cabins. Could you maybe share a little bit more on that, on your vision of Raus, or what you would like to achieve?
Yes, sure. So as I said in the beginning, like for me, Raus isn't just about cabins. It's really more about like giving you very contemporary access to nature, and letting you benefit from kind of the great powers that nature has for us, right? If you're out in the woods, just on like an afternoon stroll, with your partner, and then you breathe in and you're just like, oh, this feels just like vacation. And you're literally just like 40-minute drive from the city. Like, why aren't people doing this more often or like very frequently? And how can we change habits and take all of these frictions out of the process of kind of going out of the city, so that people actually do this forest bathing, I want to call it, like frequently. And there's a lot of thinking that we put into this. And that will not only be around cabins, but also like very much like bringing nature closer to you. And then in terms of like expansion, there's a lot of cities in Germany, but also internationally, where there's where there live a lot of people that are stressed out. So I don't think like what we're building is like a Berlin concept. I think there's a lot of people that could use some time at Raus for their own benefit. So we're trying to expand the concept across Germany and then hopefully internationally.
Perfect. And just to close off, you're growing your team also. I'm sure we have a lot of young talents from the hospitality industry looking for jobs. Are you also growing your team at Raus? Are you looking for new talents to join?
Yes, absolutely. Please feel free to send me your CVs. Anyone who could be interested. No, we're growing the team across all departments actually. From business development.
How many people are you today?
We're I think 16 full-time employees and then a couple of freelancers as well. And we are just moving into a very nice new office in Berlin. People are going back to the office actually. And we have a bar in our new office. So I would recommend
so connecting your old life as
exactly.
a DJ with your new life
yes.
with nature and
kind of, I would say so. No, we're looking for great smart people in all areas. And even if you don't see anything fit from our job description on our site, still feel free. We're more looking for smart people than for the best education.
Perfect. Julian, thank you so much. It was a great pleasure.
My pleasure. Thank you.
That's it for this episode, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to share your thoughts on this episode and everything else that is going on at Smack with us by checking out our website at smack.media or connect with us on LinkedIn, YouTube, or Instagram. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe to Smack and click here for more.